Chosen one, listen. This is not a warning. It's not a whisper. It is a declaration, final and absolute. God has spoken. The line has been drawn. And now, silence will not save you. Indifference will not shield you. Inaction will not delay what has already been set into motion. The time of signs and symbols has passed. You are not waiting for something else to happen. You are standing inside the happening. Every moment you hesitate is a decision made. Every breath you take without response is a covenant broken. This is the hour where mercy dies in the absence of movement. God has spoken. No reaction, then no mercy. Before we continue, stay with this message until the very end. You will need it, all of it. And if you feel the flame ignite inside you, as these words reach your spirit, write your warmest wish in the comments below, along with the number 77. Let your intention take form. Let your vibration move outward and awaken something that was asleep for too long. Yes, wishes do come true, but only when matched with the energy of action. This universe bends not to passivity, but to will. This is your moment to awaken it, and yourself. Now like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive deeper. And now we continue with what you need to hear most. You have been chosen not for your silence, not for your hesitation, but for your readiness to rise when others sit still. But many of the chosen forget they were ever chosen. The fire cools, the call fades, and they become observers in their own prophecy. That is where destruction begins, not from an external enemy, but from the betrayal of destiny within. God has spoken already. The command has already passed through your soul. It was not a whisper, but a roar. And still, too many souls stayed still. Too many hoped that maybe later would be safe enough, that maybe tomorrow would still hold room for obedience. But no reaction is also a reaction, and no mercy follows it. This is the time when neutrality becomes rebellion, silence becomes defiance, not because God has changed, but because you were already told, repeatedly, loudly, lovingly, with warnings, with dreams, with signs, and you asked for more, but the answer was already given. Now silence is a sin. Now distance is danger. The divine does not repeat itself when the stakes have been revealed. It simply watches what you choose and allows the consequence to unfold. You, chosen one, are not safe just because you were called. The calling demands a cost. It demands motion. When heaven breathes purpose into a soul, the soul must inhale and rise. The angels are not idle. The forces behind your journey are not static. If you do not move, they pass through you. The prophecy leaps to the next vessel, and you, once chosen, become the forsaken. Not because God rejected you, but because you sat still when He said move. And that now is the gravest error of all. You must understand the weight of inaction. It is not just delay, it is denial. Denial of destiny, denial of calling, denial of the God who placed you exactly where you are for reasons you have felt, heard, and known. You are not lost, you are positioned. But positioning without obedience leads to obliteration. Many think they can remain neutral in a battlefield between divine purpose and spiritual decay. But you cannot remain neutral with a sword in your hand and fire in your chest. You were made to choose and to act. And when you do not, that absence of movement invites a flood. Not of water, but of consequence. Not of punishment, but of natural order responding to your delay. If God told you to go and you stayed, the doors meant to open for your arrival begin to shut. The people meant to meet you walk past shadows where you should have stood. The miracles meant to activate collapse into dust waiting for the echo of your footsteps, an echo that never came. This is why no mercy follows no reaction. Mercy is not infinite when truth has already been delivered. Grace covers ignorance, but you are no longer ignorant. You know. You feel it now. You have for a long time. That unrest in your spirit wasn't anxiety. It was God calling you to move. That ache in your heart wasn't sadness. It was divine frustration. Heaven has waited long enough. And now, if you delay again, you will not be met with mercy, but with silence. The most terrifying silence of all, the silence of heaven turning its face. Because God is love, yes, but God is also order, and the order of this universe cannot be stalled by human comfort. You cannot plead for more time when the clock has struck. The flood does not wait for the sleeper. The fire does not wait for the wanderer, and the lion does not wait for the sheep who refused to rise. You were given all you needed. You were warned through dreams, through losses, through moments you knew were holy. You asked for signs. They came. You asked for confirmation. It echoed through every sacred second. And now you ask for delay. That is no longer faith. That is betrayal. Some of you think you still have time. You don't. You think the season hasn't arrived. It has. You think the voice will speak again. It won't. Not in the way it did before. Because it has already spoken. And your silence, your inaction, your stillness, they all speak too. Heaven has heard them. And now heaven responds not with comfort, but with consequence. There is a danger in thinking divine warnings are optional, that you can delay obedience and still hold the reward. But you can't hold the crown if you avoid the war. You cannot claim to be chosen while choosing nothing. A chosen one who does not act becomes a witness to their own downfall. This is not cruelty, it is clarity, and it is mercy that has already been extended far beyond its time. Now mercy retracts, and judgment walks in. You are standing at the line, not in front of it, on it. One side leads to glory, the other to loss. You are not waiting for a decision. You are the decision. And the heavens are no longer asking. They are watching. Chosen one, understand this. If you do not rise now, your name will still be remembered, but not as a conqueror, as a warning. And you were never created to be a warning. You were made to be the miracle. But miracles require motion, obedience, fire, and most of all, response. Do not think stillness is safety. Stillness is surrender to everything you were born to destroy. The demons you were meant to crush now stand taller because of your delay. The blessings you were meant to release now decay at the gates of your passivity. The people who needed your voice now cry out in silence. All because you waited. All because you hoped comfort would arrive before courage. It doesn't. It never does. There is only one path now. Respond. Rise. Move with the word. God has already spoken. Do not look for more signs. You are the sign. Do not ask for permission. You were already chosen. Do not wait for a new message. This is the final message. No reaction means no mercy. Not because God has ceased to love you, but because love must now yield to justice. And justice demands the reckoning of delay. The heavens have spoken. The earth is trembling with the command. The air is thick with spiritual consequence. You are either the lightning or the ashes, but you cannot be both. The storm is here, and silence will not save you. You feel it, don't you? That quiet unease, that tremble behind your ribs like something ancient knocking against the walls of your chest. That's not fear. That's not anxiety. That's the divine warning system within you, flaring, blazing, screaming that your soul is nearing the point of no return. Not because God is punishing you, but because your delay has opened a chasm. Your stillness has created a vacuum, and something is coming to fill it, something you may not be able to stop. God does not repeat himself without reason. When he speaks once, it is mercy. When he speaks twice, it is a second chance. But when he has spoken over and over, and still your feet remain glued to the ground, your mouth closed, your hands idle, that is not just disobedience. That is defiance, cloaked in hesitation. It is rebellion, dressed in comfort, and heaven cannot endorse that anymore. The time for sweet reminders has ended. Now comes consequence. Too many are confusing comfort with divine alignment. But comfort is not proof of safety. Often, it's the lullaby sung by destruction. The calm before the storm is deceptive. It makes you think nothing is wrong, but it is, and you know it. You've known it for a while. You feel the tension in your body, in your relationships, in your thoughts. The dreams are darker. The light is dimmer. Not because you've done something new, but because you've failed to do what was required. You stayed in a place God already called you out of. And now, the walls around you begin to rot. You prayed for God to speak. He did. You asked for clarity. He gave it. You begged for confirmation. He sent it through dreams, through messengers, through moments that made your skin rise in holy fear. And still you hesitated. Still you weighed obedience against convenience. Still you compared the weight of the calling to the ease of staying in the shadows. But light was never meant to live in shadows. You cannot be cold and quiet. Not now. Not anymore. Heaven will not hold the doors open forever. Destiny will not wait while you think about moving. There is a time limit for divine access. The portals God opens are not eternal. They are sacred windows of alignment. And if you do not pass through them, they close. And when they do, your life changes, not forward, but downward. You begin to spiral. You begin to forget what the fire ever felt like. And then, worst of all, you begin to convince yourself that maybe you were never called at all. That is the most dangerous deception of delay. You start to forget your own anointing. You start to rewrite your own identity. You tell yourself you made it up, that you misunderstood the call, that maybe this path is for someone else, but it isn't. And deep down, you know, you remember the sacred weight in your chest. You remember the signs. You remember the fire. You were chosen. And that does not fade, but it can be abandoned. And abandonment always has a price. Chosen one, you are not just stalling your destiny. You are altering the landscape of other people's salvation. Your silence is not isolated. It is echoing through generations. The people assigned to your obedience are walking through storms they were never meant to face alone. All because you did not show up. This isn't just about you. It never was. The call you carry is connected to chains. And when you do not move, those chains remain unbroken. You are the earthquake. If you do not shake, others will remain bound. Do not mistake peace for approval. Sometimes God goes quiet, not because he agrees, but because he has already spoken. His silence is not affirmation, it is withdrawal. And that is terrifying. To feel heaven watching, but not speaking. To feel the breath of the divine withdraw and leave you standing in the middle of your own hesitation, surrounded by the echoes of what you should have done. That is what no mercy feels like. Not wrath, not thunder, but absence. The absence of divine intimacy. The absence of presence. The absence of favor. You were never created to survive in absence. You were built for fire, for glory, for movement. You were designed to live in the overflow of divine instruction. And now, if you continue to ignore the voice, if you keep waiting for a softer command, you will lose access to the very purpose you were formed to fulfill. And no amount of prayer will replace obedience. No level of fasting can override delay. Sacrifice means nothing without response. You must act. You must rise. The ones who are truly chosen know the ache of delayed obedience. It doesn't just haunt your mind, it begins to decay your soul. You feel slow. You feel scattered. You lose clarity. That's not coincidence. That's consequence. The weight of ignored purpose doesn't just hover, it crushes. Your spirit wasn't made to carry a message it refuses to deliver. The heaviness you feel isn't depression. It's the grief of an assignment unfulfilled. And the longer you sit, the heavier it gets. And then, the consequences begin to compound. Opportunities vanish. Connections wither. Relationships become strained. Peace slips away. Why? Because you chose passivity over power. The path was given, but you stalled. And while you waited, the enemy built traps on every side of your stillness. The longer you wait, the more ground you lose. Not just physically, but spiritually. You lose spiritual territory. You forfeit realms of authority. You shrink from what you were meant to command. Do not think you can negotiate with time. Time belongs to God, and when He moves, you move. Delay is not neutral. It is disobedience, dressed in denial. And the universe recognizes it. That's why nothing feels aligned. That's why every door feels heavy. You are pushing in the wrong direction, because the only right direction was already revealed, and you ignored it. There is no mercy where there is no response, because mercy is made for movement. It meets you on the path. It covers you when you fall, not when you hide. You cannot receive grace in rebellion. You cannot demand favor while you delay fulfillment. This isn't about punishment. It's about principle. God has laws, divine ones, unshakable ones, and they do not bow to your comfort or confusion. They remain true, and you are either aligned with them or outside of them. You've already been told what to do. You know the next step. You don't need another sign. You need to move. The longer you hesitate, the more fragile your spiritual infrastructure becomes. Every ignored command weakens your foundation. And soon, when the winds come, not if, but when, you will not stand. Not because you weren't called, but because you refused to build. And what does it mean to build? It means to obey, to respond, to act when God speaks, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's scary, especially when it's inconvenient. If your obedience only activates when it's comfortable, then it's not obedience, it's agreement. And God is not looking for agreement. He is commanding obedience. This is the age of reckoning, the era of response. Those who do not move will be moved out of the way. Those who do not rise will fall. And those who ignore the voice will find themselves surrounded not by silence, but by consequence. Do not mistake the quiet for peace. It is the silence of heaven stepping back. It is the breath of God waiting for your return. You have one option now: obey, not later. Now, not softly, fully. Do what you were told. Become who you were formed to be. Shake off the excuses. Rip out the roots of delay. Break the chains of your comfort and move. Because the next move is not just yours, it is heaven's. And what comes next depends entirely on your response. There is something terrifying about the quiet before divine justice. It doesn't come with warning lights or roaring thunder. It comes with stillness, cold, dense, suffocating stillness, the kind that presses against your skin and makes you question everything. That stillness is not peace. It is not safety. It is the moment after the final warning, when the heavens close their mouth and leave you alone with what you've chosen. And make no mistake, not choosing is a choice. Indecision is not innocent. It is the rejection of divine urgency. It is the slow betrayal of your own calling. And when God has spoken and the chosen one does not respond, the consequences begin silently. Then suddenly, the bridge you thought would always be there burns behind you. The doors you assumed would open remain locked. What was once overflow becomes drought, not as punishment, but as a result of alignment being severed. This is where many fall. They confuse God's patience with tolerance. But there is a difference. Patience is mercy. It gives space for movement. It gives time for change. But tolerance would mean God accepts rebellion, and He does not. He cannot. He is holy. He is order. He is truth. And truth does not compromise. So when you continue to delay, you are not being tolerated, you are being warned. And when the warnings stop, so does protection. What comes next is not chaos. It is correction, and it is holy. It looks like closed doors, lost opportunities, strange heaviness, relationships falling apart, and peace bleeding out of your days. These aren't attacks from darkness, they're signals from heaven. You didn't listen. Now you will learn. Not because God hates you, but because He cannot allow your disobedience to continue poisoning your purpose. People talk about being chosen as if it's all glory, but glory is fire. Glory is weight. To be chosen is to be watched. You are marked. Everything about you carries a consequence, because everything about you was created to shift something larger than yourself. When you disobey, it's not just your life that bends. It's the ripple you were meant to cause in the lives of others. You silence miracles. You freeze momentum. You deny the divine choreography its next movement. And heaven mourns your silence. There is no place more spiritually dangerous than the heart of a chosen one who refuses to move. Because now, heaven can no longer protect you from the storm, because you've positioned yourself against the wind. And what you thought would just be a delay becomes a detour into spiritual decay. You lose clarity, you hear less, you see less, you feel less. And that numbness, that terrifying quiet where once there was divine fire, that is the beginning of mercy leaving. And when mercy leaves, nothing around you makes sense anymore. You try to do what used to work, but it's empty now. You go to places that once felt sacred, but they feel dry. You speak words that once carried weight, and they fall flat. Why? Because your spirit is no longer aligned with the source. You've stepped out of divine current. You're moving, yes, but you're moving against the river now, and every step forward takes more energy, more effort, more time, and yields less. That's not growth. That's separation. The worst part is that it becomes easier to pretend, to perform. You remember what a fire-filled person looks like, so you mimic the motions. But it's not real anymore. Your prayers become hollow. Your words become recycled. Your presence becomes tolerated, not transformational. And eventually, you lose the fear of that. You convince yourself it's normal, that everyone feels this way, that the silence is just part of the path. But it's not. It's a sign. It's the consequence of ignoring the sound of God's voice too long. The truth is, there are chosen ones right now who have spiritually flatlined, and they don't even know it. Their spirit hasn't heard from heaven in weeks, months, even years. But because they still have a platform or a following or momentum from old obedience, they think they're fine. But they are hollow. Their power has been revoked, their oil has dried, and the Spirit no longer flows where it once overflowed. Not because God changed, but because they did not respond when He last called. Chosen one, this message isn't a suggestion, it's a warning. You are approaching the line, and once crossed, it cannot be uncrossed. The mercy you have felt, the grace you have walked in, the protection that has surrounded your delay, it has an expiration date, and it is near, not to scare you, but to wake you up. You are not safe in silence. You are not secure in waiting. You are exposed. When God has spoken, your delay becomes disobedience, and your disobedience becomes danger. Danger to your calling, danger to your future, danger to your legacy. And no one will tell you this, because most are too afraid to speak it. But the silence of others is not an excuse for your own. You were not made to be like the rest. You were not chosen for the crowd. You are not common. You are set apart. And your responsibility is heavier because your calling is greater. The days of gentle nudges are over. This is not the season for spiritual whispers. This is the season for divine ultimatums. If you do not move now, what you lose may not be recoverable. You are standing in front of a final moment. Not final in God's love, but final in this phase of your purpose. There are doors that only open once, instructions that expire, assignments that, when left unfulfilled, are given to someone else. And when they are, the favor that once followed you follows them. This is not about fear. This is about fire. The kind that purifies, the kind that separates, the kind that proves what's real and what's performative. If you want real power, real transformation, real favor, you have to give God a real response. Not lip service, not staged worship, real surrender, immediate obedience. Nothing less will hold in what's coming. The earth is shaking, and only those rooted in divine instruction will remain standing. You are not weak, you are not lost, you are simply late, and you don't have to stay that way. One move, one real act of obedience can shift the entire trajectory. But it has to be now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. Obedience isn't about feelings, it's about faith. Do what you were told. Build what you were shown. Leave what you were called out of. Say what you were born to declare, and do it before the silence around you becomes the end of the conversation. Because if heaven has stopped speaking, it means it's waiting. Not forever, just until the consequences arrive. And when they do, it's not that God has turned against you, it's that you turned away first. And now, the result is simply catching up. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when time is no longer on their side. That moment is not marked by a clock or a date. It's marked by the silence of heaven. Not the peaceful kind that comforts you in worship, but the terrifying kind that follows willful delay. You feel it when you pray, and there's no reply. You feel it when you try to go back to the place where you last felt fire, and the air is cold. It's not punishment, it's withdrawal. It's the divine stepping back, not to abandon you, but to allow you to feel the weight of what you've ignored. You can't ignore a divine command and expect divine intimacy. Heaven does not chase, it calls. And when you don't move, the call doesn't get louder. It disappears. Because obedience is the only currency that keeps divine alignment active. This is the secret most don't want to face. God is love, yes. But love doesn't always mean leniency. When you are chosen, love comes with fire. It corrects, it convicts, and if necessary, it confronts you through loss. Many chosen ones right now are walking through deserts not because God abandoned them, but because they refuse to leave the place God called them out of. They're still trying to resurrect old relationships, revisit expired seasons, rebuild what was supposed to remain broken. They think their suffering is a test, but it's not a test. It's the aftermath of disobedience. It's what happens when heaven stops holding back the natural consequences of delay, and those consequences are heavy. You cannot build on ground you were told to leave. You cannot heal in places where God has withdrawn His presence. You cannot expect favor to follow where disobedience leads. And yet, that's what many do. They delay, then demand blessing. They ignore instruction, then ask for insight. They resist conviction, then beg for clarity. But God is not mocked. His grace is not permission. His patience is not passivity. And His voice does not wait forever. If you were anyone else, perhaps the silence wouldn't matter. Perhaps the delay wouldn't be dangerous. But you are not anyone else. You are chosen. You are marked. And with that mark comes responsibility. You don't get to live casually. You don't get to linger in confusion. You don't get to negotiate timelines. Your delay doesn't just cost you. It costs those connected to your obedience. And when they suffer, their blood is on your hands. Yes, that's how serious this is. You were sent as a lifeline, as a vessel, as a light. And when you do not burn, others remain in darkness. That's why the silence feels like suffocation now, because your spirit knows it's not just your life at stake. It's every assignment you were born to complete, every destiny you were meant to influence, every soul that was meant to feel heaven through your yes, and your silence robbed them. This is the mercy most can't recognize. God's silence is not absence, it's a mirror. It shows you exactly where you are, not where you pretend to be, not where people think you are, but where your spirit actually resides, stalled, hardened, hidden behind delay and indecision. And when God allows that silence to continue, He's giving you a final chance, not because He needs your obedience, but because He still wants your restoration. You see, when God speaks and you don't respond, He doesn't always speak again. Sometimes He simply adjusts the map. The path you were supposed to take is no longer available. The blessing you were meant to walk into is handed to someone else. The door you were praying for now belongs to another, not out of spite, but because delay turned destiny into danger. And God, in His mercy, would rather reassign your purpose than allow your disobedience to poison it. Chosen one, you cannot afford to pretend anymore. The days of selective obedience are over. This is not a trial run. This is not rehearsal. This is the moment everything changes, one way or the other. You can either bow or break, move or be moved, align or be left behind. And that isn't drama, that's truth. Truth that only the chosen ones ever truly feel in their bones. You've been told your whole life that you were called, that you were different, that you carried something others didn't. But no one told you the cost. No one told you what would happen if you stopped responding, if you started drifting, if you waited too long. They told you you were gifted, but they didn't tell you that gifts without obedience become burdens, that anointing without action becomes torment, that calling without response becomes a curse. This is the moment you decide if your calling was real or convenient, because it's easy to say yes when it feels good, when the crowd claps, when the way is clear. But what about now, when the lights are off, when heaven is quiet, when you've gone too far in delay to feel confident, but too deep in purpose to walk away? That's when the real ones rise. That's when the chosen ones choose again. Not based on feelings, but based on fire. You have been spared. You have been warned. You have been chosen. But now, you must be responsible. That's the difference between those who carry destiny and those who talk about it. Responsibility, discipline, action. When God says move, they don't ask for a second sign. They don't need confirmation. They don't wait for comfort. They move because they know the cost of waiting. They remember what the silence felt like, and they never want to feel it again. So what will you do now? You've felt the silence. You've tasted the stillness. You've walked through the spiritual drought. And you know, deeply, that this is not where you're meant to remain. But knowing is not enough. Feeling is not enough. Hoping is not enough. Heaven is not waiting for your intention. It's waiting for your action. And every second you delay now is a seed of disobedience that grows into something you can't control later. You have one job, chosen one: obey. Not tomorrow, not after you get confirmation from others, not after you fix everything yourself. Obey now, move now, say yes now, burn the excuses, leave the delay, mourn the cost, but do not let it stop you. The silence has already spoken louder than words. Don't make God speak again through loss, because the next sound may not be a whisper. It may be the closing of a door you can't open again. You've lingered at the edge long enough. You've stood on the line between obedience and defiance for days, months, some of you, years. You've mastered the art of looking surrendered while keeping one foot planted in rebellion. But the truth always outlives the illusion, and now the illusion is cracking. Heaven is no longer waiting for your performance to catch up to your calling. God has spoken. You didn't move, and now mercy is stepping back so consequence can walk in. This is the moment when many fall, not because they're weak, but because they were warned and didn't act. The weight of delayed obedience doesn't just hang in the air, it settles on your shoulders. You start to feel tired, not just in your body, but in your spirit. Not because the enemy attacked, but because the Lord withdrew. Because he watched you receive revelation, opportunity, instruction, and watched you freeze. There is no refuge in neutrality anymore. That season is over. You are either aligning or rebelling. There is no middle. There is no almost. There is no soon. Every moment of hesitation now opens a door, and not all of them are holy. When God pulls his hand back, what remains is not peace. It is exposure. Exposure to everything he was shielding you from while you delayed. Exposure to the loss you would have avoided had you obeyed. Exposure to the voices he once silenced on your behalf. Some of you think you're under spiritual attack, but you're not. You're under divine withdrawal. You're feeling what it's like to live outside of alignment. The ground beneath you feels unstable because the grace that once held you there has been lifted. And if that terrifies you, it should. Not because you're abandoned, but because God is letting you feel the edge. And sometimes it takes the pain of that edge to make the chosen finally walk the path they've been avoiding. You were warned through dreams. You were warned through people. You were warned through delay after delay. And now the last warning has come. Silence. That holy hush that once meant presence now means distance. God hasn't left, but he has stopped repeating himself. He's no longer feeding your indecision with confirmation, no longer surrounding your rebellion with patience. He's watching now, not to punish, but to witness what you'll do when there's nothing left to rely on but faith and obedience. Many want to be used by God, but few want to be emptied first. Few want to lose comfort. Few want to give up the distractions. Few want to cut ties with people who feed their weakness. But God is not in the business of raising comfortable vessels. He's raising holy ones, and holiness requires separation. Separation from what you wanted, from what you thought you needed, and especially from what you refuse to surrender. That's where the mercy ends. Not because God is cruel, but because you've been coddled long enough. Heaven doesn't train warriors by making life easier. It trains them by removing the cushions. The support systems you once leaned on are failing now, not because they're broken, but because they're being removed. The doors are closing because you waited too long to walk through them. And the windows that once gave you glimpses of what could be are now fogging over with consequence. There is something deeply spiritual about opportunity. Every door you ignore closes in silence, but its echo echoes through your future. That echo becomes regret. It becomes spiritual weight. And for the chosen ones, it becomes unbearable. Why? Because you weren't born to miss out. You weren't born to stay behind. You were born to set fire, to shift atmospheres, to change history. And every maybe later is a dagger to that mission. What are you waiting for? The right moment? The perfect timing? Someone else to confirm what God already made clear? You are delaying not because you don't know, it's because you're afraid to lose control. But what you haven't realized is that you're already losing more by holding back than you ever would by surrendering. Obedience hurts, yes, but disobedience, it haunts. It follows you into the night, into your relationships, into your health, into your spirit. It whispers when you pray. It fogs your vision, and it builds a wall so subtle that one day you wake up and can't hear God at all. Not because He left, but because your delay made your ears deaf. And at that point, no prophecy can restore what obedience refused to protect. You were given a voice for heaven, but if you won't use it, heaven will raise another. Your silence doesn't cancel God's plan, it just moves it forward without you. And that is the worst consequence for a chosen one, to watch someone else carry what you were born to hold. To hear someone else preach with the power you forfeited. To see someone else walk through the door you ignored. That is the grief no one talks about. The grief of missed destiny. The grief of knowing that you were the answer, but you stayed asleep. So now, the moment arrives. Not with thunder, not with flames, but with a quiet that presses against your soul. The kind of quiet that demands a response, because God has spoken. The time to debate is over. The time to negotiate is over. This is not a warning anymore. It is a verdict. And what happens next depends on one thing: your response. If you move, doors will open. If you delay again, they will not. Not because God is petty, but because purpose has a schedule. Destiny has a clock. And you, chosen one, have already spent too much time stalling. You must act now, not to save your reputation, but to recover your alignment. Your spiritual balance is slipping, not because of sin, but because of silence. Because you stopped responding. You started waiting for convenience. You started asking for signs when God had already issued commands. And now you must choose reaction or rejection. There is no third option. Don't mistake God's stillness for acceptance. It's a last call, a divine stare, waiting for your movement. And if you still refuse, then you must prepare. Because what follows is not just delay anymore. It is distance, not just silence, but severance. Not just discomfort, but destiny rerouted without you. And if that happens, you won't feel punishment. You'll feel the emptiness of being disconnected from your own reason for existence. You will look in the mirror and see potential you never unlocked. You will hear sermons that no longer stir you. You will pray, but the connection will feel flat. Because you weren't rejected, you rejected him first. Quietly, repeatedly, fatally. You still have a choice, but this is the final one.